much, Craig. It's a real pleasure here to be with you all and to talk about StemActive. To the background of StemActive, if I link this back to things that you already know about stem cells, because stem cells have been out there for the past 20 years. More recently, we talk more about them, but they've been there. So you have heard about stem cells. You have heard about the ways that stem cells are used. And the reason why there's so much interest in stem cells is because scientifically now the whole world recognizes that they have enormous regenerative potential. So what you normally hear about is that we can isolate stem cells from the bone marrow, from the blood, from fat tissue. There are even ways of extracting stem cells from the dental pulp, from hair follicles, and these stem cells can all have enormous regenerative potential. But if you look at what I just said, they are in the bone marrow, they are from your blood, they are from your fat tissue. That means they are already in your body. So what the question that has fascinated me from the beginning of this field of research is, if stem cells have such regenerative potential, but they are already in our body, first question, what are they doing? What is the natural role of stem cells? And second question, is there a way of tapping into the regenerative potential of stem cells in our body? Because it's pretty obvious that stem cells are not better because we take them out of the body and we put them back in. So let's first talk about what are stem cells, and let's describe what they do in the body and how we can tap into their potential. So what is stem cells? The best way to define what a stem cell is probably start by defining what is not a stem cell. All the cells in your body are referred to as somatic cells. These are cells that all have one special thing that they do. They will never multiply and they will never transform into another type of cells. These are the cells of your muscles, of your heart, of your brain, of your skin, every single cell type of your body. A cell of the pancreas makes insulin. That's all that it does. A cell of your retina will be excited by light, will send a signal to your brain and will generate vision. That's the only thing that a cell of your retina will do. They do one thing. They never transform into anything else. At the other end of the spectrum, you have stem cells. Stem cells, historically, the dogma, I should say, for the past century, is that stem cells are precursors to blood cells. They make red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So what is really the big discovery at the turn of the century is that stem cells from the bone marrow, aside from being precursors to blood cells, they are also precursors to basically every single cell type in the body. They have the ability, as stem cells, they don't do anything. They are nothing. Their real identity, if I could say, is in their ability to transform into other types of cells, cells of the blood, but as we know right now, cells of the brain, of the heart, of muscles, liver, pancreas, cells of virtually every single tissue in your body. Now, before getting into the natural role of stem cells in the body, I want to sort of, how could I say, mark your brain. I want to mark your mind. I want you to realize what we're talking about here is huge. It is definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest discovery of our time in medicine. I want to show you a video that shows the power of your own stem cells. Because if I were to ask you, when do you think in the future, like in how many years or decades, do you believe that we're going to go in the lab and be able to create a novel organ based on your stem cells? And probably the feeling will be, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And look at this study here, published probably about close to 10 years ago. So this is the work of Doris Taylor. What she did is that she extracted the heart from a mouse and also extracted the stem cell from the animal and circulated enzymes in the heart, enzymes that digest all the cardiac muscle, the cardiac tissue. So at the end, all you have is the connective tissue that is making the heart, the collagen, the soft skeleton of the heart. So it still contains the trace that this is the heart, but it has nothing that belongs to the heart, like no muscle, no function, no nothing. And on that tissue, they simply spread the animal's own stem cells. And as you can see, within a matter of a week or two, you end up with a beating heart in a test tube. This is the power of your own stem cells. This is what your stem cells do. You never go from a time when you have no heart at all to a new heart, but your heart will be damaged, will degenerate as you age. Every single tissue will. And it's just to show the extent of the power of your own stem cells. When they get into a tissue, they can become cells of that tissue. Now, let's go into what is the natural role of stem cells in the body. 5-10 years ago, I had to go through all the science behind all of this, all the studies, because it was still considered something new, something around which a lot of people had skepticism. It was not well accepted. Today, it is very well accepted. So I'm going to have a small animation that really summarizes everything that we know about stem cells and their role in the body. Anytime there is an injury, symbolized here by a heart attack, but it could be anything, broken bone, burn to the skin, anything in the body, the affected area will release compounds that are very well known today. GCSF, interleukin 8, for example, stem cell factor, very well described in medicine. They will reach the bone marrow and they will trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. Within 3 to 5 days after the injury, the number of stem cells in circulation will increase 3 to 10-fold. Now, these stem cells, they go everywhere in the body. They don't know what is the tissue that is affected. So what happens is that starting on the second day, the affected tissue starts to release locally other compounds, specifically stromal-derived factor 1. Of course, you can forget all these names. It's not relevant. But when that compound crosses into the capillary around that injury and connect with stem cells, it triggers the migration of stem cells out of the blood into the tissue. And upon contact with cellular debris of that tissue, stem cells will start to multiply. They can multiply in this way for up to 50 generations. So one stem cell can give you many, many thousands of cells. And these cells, upon contact with the tissue, will start to transform into cells of that tissue, literally repairing the tissue. This is your repair system. Every single time in your life that you have had any kind of injury, the stem cells are playing this role in your body and are repairing the tissue. In all these steps, so we have seen, we release stem cells from the bone marrow, they circulate in the bloodstream, they migrate into a tissue, they multiply, then they transform into cells of that tissue. Of all these steps, the one that is the most important is the release of stem cells from the bone marrow and the consequence, which is an increase in the number of stem cells in circulation. All the other steps, once you have released stem cells from the bone marrow, they will circulate, they will migrate. There are things you can do to facilitate their migration, but they will migrate in the tissue. When they arrive in the tissue, they will multiply and transform into cell of that tissue. So the most important here is the number of stem cells in circulation. So I won't go through all the science. I'm going to show you just a few studies to illustrate the concept. Understand here that everything that I'm talking about tonight is backed by thousands of studies. So it's very well documented. All I'm showing is a few studies that will illustrate the concept that I'm talking about. So first, the first big conclusion to have in mind is that there's a direct link between how many stem cells in circulation and your ability to repair. More stem cells in circulation means more stem cells are available to participate in tissue repair. Example here, 2 people with the same broken bone. You have seen in your life that we don't all repair with the same efficacy and with the same speed. While people who repair well and repair quickly are simply people who naturally have more stem cells in circulation. As a parenthesis here, in all the studies that we have done, we have found in people who have very few stem cells will be somewhere around 0.05 stem cells per microliter, and people who have many stem cells can be up to 5 stem cells per microliter. So you can see here a range of about 100-fold, which is huge. When you look at red blood cells, it's going to be somewhere between, let's say, 4 and 13. So million cells. So it's a very, very small band, and before you're out or too low. So when we talk about stem cells, you have 100-fold range in terms of the number of stem cells in circulation. What we're talking about here is that if you are at the lowest range of stem cells in circulation, your body does not have a strong ability to repair. If you are at the higher range, then you can repair much better. So all of this begs the question, if I have an injury and I'm not repairing well, or I'm repairing well, but I want to repair better, is putting more stem cells in circulation a good strategy to support the ability of the body to repair? And the answer is yes. Increasing the number of stem cells in circulation will increase the body's ability to repair and renew. Here is one study to show as an example. In that study, what scientists did is that they took mice in which they triggered a heart attack by making a knot in the coronary artery. So they stopped the blood flow to the heart. So the animal had a heart attack. Then they released that knot. They allowed circulation to resume. And they separated the animals in two groups to let them recover from their heart attack. One group was controlled, to which nothing was done. The other group, they injected those compounds known to trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. The cocktail that they injected in these animals triggered an increase in the number of circulating stem cells that was quite significant, probably something like 1,000%, even more. So the two group here, one group is controlled, the other one had more stem cells in circulation. We can see in the control group severe scar tissue, with a lot of no new blood vessels, very high level of mortality. If I remember well, we are at about 73% mortality and very severe signs of cardiomyopathy. In the group that had more stem cells in circulation, we can see a renewal of the ventricular wall, new blood vessels tapping in the other ventricules, level of survival, mortality, I believe, was something like 17% compared to 73%, and then almost quasi-normalized cardiovascular function. So in a world where there's virtually nothing that we can do to help recover from a heart attack, here's a study that shows how putting more stem cells in circulation can really help the body very rapidly. This is 4 weeks time frame, can really help the cardiac tissue to repair. The reason why you don't hear about this and it is not used in humans is because those compounds have an effect that is unrelated to stem cells. They can have severe side effects, which is to trigger platelet aggregation and a stroke. So it would be like to say, to help you repair from your heart attack, we'll give you a stroke. So it's not a very great marketing message. So it is not done. But that study shows very clearly that if we can put more stem cells in circulation, the body will indeed have the ability, the biology to use these stem cells to enhance tissue repair. I will only show you that study, but I could show you exact same phenomenon in cases of people with Parkinson, diabetes, spinal cord injury, stroke, lung disease, liver failure. Tons of studies have shown that putting more stem cells in circulation can help just about any tissue repair. I just want to be clear here. What I'm talking about here is not StemActive. I'm talking about what your stem cells are doing in your body and showing the data to show how your stem cells from your bone marrow, when they are released naturally from your bone marrow, that is the kind of thing that they can do in your body. So if we can put more stem cells in circulation, yes, it will help tissue repair better. But to me, probably the most important of everything that I'll be talking about tonight is this third conclusion, which is the contrary of the first two. The first two are telling us that if you have more stem cells in circulation, you will be able to better repair. The last conclusion, the third conclusion, is telling us that if we happen to have fewer stem cells in circulation, then our body is exposed, is susceptible to develop diseases, age-related health problems as we age. And this observation is coming from a lot of studies that were done when they were studying the ability of stem cells to repair. When they are done in the lab with a number, let's say they look at the ability of stem cells to repair the heart. They're left sometimes with a few mice at the end of the study, and these mice become pets in the lab, so they keep them. At the end of their life, at some point, some scientists decided to look at these mice and look at all the tissues. And while you see that a lot of repair took place in the heart or whatever was the organ and tissue that was injured in that study, you see cells of the tissue that have emerged from stem cells in all the organs and tissues of the body. So you have heard before these phrases, you have a new body every year, every 5 years, 7 years, 12 years. The concept is very real, but it was almost like an intuition. There was no data supporting this whole phenomenon. Now with stem cell research, there is. And the reality is that you don't have a body every year, 5 years, or 7 years, is that every single of your tissues and organs in your body are constantly in a process of turnover. You lose cells every day, and in order to stay healthy, stem cells are going to go and repair the cells of these various tissues. And that's why you can age and be healthy. For example, you have a new liver every 2-3 years. So the moment that you are 4 or 5 years old, 10 years old, and you still have a liver, that means your stem cells have played their role here of tissue repair or tissue renewal. The problem in this whole story is that there's a phenomenon that is taking place in the body fairly early in our lives. And it's the fact that we are born with red marrow that makes stem cells, and that red marrow converts into yellow marrow or fatty marrow that does not make stem cells. And that conversion happens very early in our lives. So by age 30, we have lost almost 95% of our red marrow. And the amount of red marrow that we have left in the body is directly linked to how many stem cells we will have in circulation. So there's a dramatic decline in the number of stem cells in circulation available to participate in tissue repair and tissue renewal. And this is why in our 30s, we all discover at some point that we're no longer Superman, Wonder Woman. We don't repair and heal as fast as we used to. And we start to get up in the morning and experience that we start for the first time of our lives, we start to think about health because we get up in the morning and we feel it. That's when we have lost that balance between the number of cells that are being lost and enough stem cells to offset that cellular loss. From that point on, we are basically engaging on a path for the rest of our lives where every day we are left with unrepaired micro damages. And as these unrepaired micro damages accumulates over the years, they develop down the road with any kind of age-related problems. So every single type of age-related problems or disease are linked to the fact that there's a point in our life where we don't have enough stem cells to maintain our tissues. So I published this concept that I'm explaining to you right now in 2013, because at that time, stem cells were only part of repairing tissues. So it was the concept of how stem cells were actually deeply associated with aging and disease formation. And in this article, what I was proposing was that there's a way to see if this whole concept is real. We simply have to go and count the number of stem cells in the bloodstream of people who have developed various kinds of age-related problems and simply see how many stem cells we have compared to healthy people of the same age. We should find in these people fewer stem cells. So fewer stem cells means that they cannot repair and renew as well as people who have more stem cells. And over time, the problem will develop in wherever is the weakness in their physiology based on genetics, lifestyle, exposure to environmental toxins, past injuries, whatever it is. Wherever is the weakness in their body, that's where the problem will show up. So now many of these studies have been done. So let's very quickly go through them. The point here is not to be too technical about it. I just want you to see the kind of data that is coming from many studies. So this is a study where the number of stem cells was counted in the bloodstream of people who have a normal glucose tolerance, meaning non-diabetic, impaired fasting glucose, they're starting to be pre-diabetic. And now as diabetes developed, impaired glucose tolerance and diabetes mellitus, the diagnosis of insulin-dependent diabetes, and we see that there's a straight line. As people progress in the disease, they have fewer stem cells. We can look at the same thing with kidney function. To the left here, we have people with normal kidney function, and the next three to the right here, we have people that are at various levels of kidney function. And what we can see is that as they progress in the disease, they have fewer and fewer stem cells. People who have developed kidney failure have about, half, 1/3 of the number of stem cells found in healthy people. If you take all these people and you make a graph between kidney function and number of stem cells, you have a straight line with a correlating factor of 45, a correlation factor of 0.45, which is extremely strong. So there's a direct link between kidney function and number of stem cells in circulation. We have a very similar relationship with erectile function. So to the right here, patient who went to see a doctor to complain for poor erectile function. To the left, control people, healthy people. And if we look at the average, we can see that people who complained of poor erectile function have on average a little bit less than half the number of stem cells found in healthy people. If I take all these individuals and I establish their international index of erectile function and do a graph between that index and number of stem cells in circulation, I get a straight line with a factor of correlation of 0.44. Again, very strong. So there's a direct link between the number of stem cells in circulation and erectile function. Erectile function has a lot to do with vascular health. If we take the main parameter of vascular health, blood pressure, we can see that people with high blood pressure have about half the number of stem cells compared to healthy controls. Same thing with heart disease. People at various degree of development of ischemic heart disease have a declining number of stem cells. And when they reach phase 3 of ischemic heart disease, they have about half the number of stem cells compared to normal people. Same thing with Crohn's disease, problems of the digestive system. Same thing with problems of the brain. Same thing with COPD, problems of the lung. Same thing with rheumatoid arthritis. And the list continues. Lupus, the same thing was seen as one. Anytime a new health problems, age-related health problem is studied, we see the same conclusion, the same relationship. So I just wanted to go through a few of these studies here to show you that this simple conclusion is really backed up by a lot of science. And that conclusion is simply to understand that your stem cells are your repair system, your renewal system. Just like you have an immune system that is vital for you. If you don't have an immune system, you would not live more than, I don't know, maybe a year. If you don't have stem cells, you would not live either much longer than 3 to 6 months. Your stem cells are essential to your survival. We have simply never talked about it because before the year 2000, it was not a thing. If you think about it, what is a system? Let's take an example, the immune system. It is lymphoid tissues that produce, so specific tissues in your body that produce a specific cell, an immune cell, that is going to travel in your body in a very coordinated manner to go in the area, not everywhere, in the area where you have an infection. They will move right beside the bacteria. And when they are beside the bacteria, they will detect the bacteria and release compounds to kill that bacteria. It is a very, very well coordinated process to kill bacteria or virally infected cells. Here we have the bone marrow, a very specific tissue, releasing a very specific type of cells, stem cells, that are going to migrate in the body in a very coordinated manner to migrate in tissues that are in need of repair or in need of renewal. And in these tissues, stem cells will repair or maintain these tissues so that that tissue, that organ can continue to do its work properly so that your whole body stays alive and stays healthy. We have literally discovered that the body has a repair system. It's huge in the whole world of medicine. And of this, the next conclusion, more stem cells in circulation means that more stem cells are available to participate in tissue repair and tissue renewal, helping the body repair and reach optimal health. So if more stem cells in circulation is great, then what can we do to put more stem cells in circulation? Before I get there, there's a question that in the early years of making all these discoveries, there's a question that was in my mind and kind of bothering me. And it was simply, if just putting a little bit more stem cells in circulation, with what we have seen over the years, putting something like 30% more stem cells in circulation was leading to very, very significant overall health benefits. So why is it that in our evolution, we have stopped short of having just a little bit more stem cells? And it dawned on me at some point when I stumbled on a graph here of life expectancy. And we can see that for as long as humans have been humans, until very recently in our history, life expectancy was about 30 years old. There has never been in our biological evolution a need to live longer, to repair better past 30 years, because you did not live past 30 years. So the body has not developed, has not selected that as an ability. And what happens probably after something like the early 1800s, slowly, our life expectancy started to raise until 80 years old. So basically, Our body now has 50 years, additional 50 years in life expectancy, for which the biology of the body is not there to help the body repair. So that is really what we're talking about here, finding a way to enhance the natural ability of the body to repair and renew so that we can live these extra years with health and wellness, vitality, strength, and above all, quality of life. And that is really where StemActive comes. So let's put everything that I've talked about before, let's put that aside. This was really about what your stem cells are doing in your body, their role and their link with how your body can remain healthy as you age. So StemActive is a blend of 3 key components: Allomacroglotta from Madagascar, sea buckthornberry from the Tibetan Plateau, and blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. So let's go through these one by one, and it will allow me to talk a little bit of how did I get, or how did we get to discover these plants? Like, what led us to stumble on these? Because my background is neurophysiology, brain research. So it's not in 2001 by looking at the emergence of this field of stem cells that I thought, let's be the first here doing products that can have an effect on stem cells. It's really the traditional scientific method. When I was hired to study this blue-green algae from Klamath Lake at the time, so DSHEA had just been passed, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, and companies making claims about their product needed to have science to back up their claims. So there were claims on immunity, on concentration, mental clarity, and on inflammation. So very quickly, we identified the active compounds. But as I'm doing all this work, I come across people who had very, very significant improvements of condition touching the heart, the skin, the liver, the pancreas, the lung, the brain, the joints. And really, on the basis of what we had discovered at that point with AFA, we could not explain these benefits. So we did a number of studies. We got good data, but we never got anything that really was a big aha, where we really found something that explained all these benefits. Because the main thing here is that it was bringing benefits to a broad variety of aspects of human health. No plant normally does that. So it is in the early 2001, when a colleague of mine sent me an article that was for the first time reporting how a stem cell from the bone marrow went from the bone marrow to the brain and became a brain cell. So I thought, wait a minute, is that the only thing in the scientific literature? So I went into the local library and started to look at other studies that might exist documenting something similar. And I found a study documenting how stem cells could become liver cells and heart cells. So on the basis of these 3 studies, my thought was, if stem cells can become heart, brain, and liver, it cannot be only those 3. That means they can also become pancreas, lung, the skin, joints, and everything else. And if they can, then that means that it has to be their role. How do you want a stem cell to go to the brain and become a brain cell, and it's not its normal function? It has to be its normal function. So I published an article in the journal Medical Hypotheses suggesting that stem cells were the repair system of the body. And in the back of my mind, what if that plant was basically working by triggering the release of stem cells from the bone marrow? So we set up the lab, started to do this work, and we quickly discovered that that's what the plant was doing. Within about an hour of consumption, we can see an increase of about 25% in the number of circulating stem cells. So after discovering AFA, for me, the question was, since we evolved in symbiosis with the environment, there cannot be just one plant having an effect on stem cells. So how do you find the other plants? So we simply asked the question, what has been used? What else is known globally, historically, to be associated, like AFA, to a broad variety of health benefits? And let's go and test them. Medicinal mushroom, goji berry, ginseng, things like this. And we found that they all have, to an extent, an effect on stem cells. But where we really got the big hits is when we start to look at remote areas of the world, go to places that are outside of our global economy. What do they do in Madagascar, on the Tibetan Plateau, in Papua New Guinea, in South America? What are they using in these areas locally to help various kinds of health problems? And that's when we discovered somebody who was traveling in China, and I asked that person, so this is video basically of the field where we harvest, the farm where we harvest the sea buckthorn berry. So I just asked 3 Chinese experts in biochemistry that have studied traditional Chinese medicine. And I asked them, if you are lost on a desert island, what plant, just one, you can only bring one on that desert island, what do you bring? And all three said sea buckthorn berry. I was very surprised. I was not expecting that at all. So I started to dive in the scientific literature and discovered that indeed sea buckthorn berry has been used in Tibetan medicine, Mongolian medicine, Chinese medicine for problem of the lungs, of the heart, the cardiovascular system, for the function of the pancreas, to help repair burn of the skin, cut to the skin, bone fracture. So we see the broad range of benefits. So it suggests maybe the effect is on stem cells. But more fascinating than this is the name. In science, scientific names most of the time describe the physical properties of a plant, or like what they look like, or our relationship, humans, our relationship with the plant. So for example, an apple, its Latin name is Malus. Malus comes from Latin mal, which means evil, and it comes from basically the apple of, Adam and Eve. And so scientific names are full of those kinds of stories, and the name comes from our relationship with the plant. Very rare are plants that have been named to describe their health benefits. And here it's the case. Hippophae means, hippo means horse, phae means light, so it means shining horse. And it's Alexander the Great, as he was traveling during his conquest in Western China. At some point, he left a number of horses to die. They were wounded in battle. So he left them to die in a field of sea buckthorn berry. And when he came back a few weeks later, through that field, he found a herd of vibrant and healthy horses that had a shiny coat. And a shiny coat is a sign of health for horses. So the berry was named shiny coat. And from that point on, it was integrated in Tibetan medicine, Chinese medicine, Mongolian medicine, and then we know what it's good for. But it's been used for more than 2,000 years. So we basically developed an extract from sea buckthorn berry. The article was published 3 years ago, and this is a brief summary of the data because it has an effect on many different types of stem cells. But what we see, remember, AFA was a quick release and come back to baseline. With sea buckthorn berry, we have a much more sustained release that reaches can reach up to 40% increase in the number of circulating stem cells. The star ingredient in StemActive is Allomacroclada. The story here is very interesting. I met randomly a pharmacist, and she was basically traveling the world in various remote areas of the world to try to find plants for Alzheimer's and Parkinson. And as she was coming back from one of her trip, I asked her, is there a plant that you came across that the healers, the shaman in the area are telling you, take this is good for everything? And at first she laughed because she thought nothing is good for everything. But when I explained what I was looking for, something that is good for one thing, stem cell release, but the experience of people is going to be a broad range of benefits, she said, yes, indeed. In her last trip to Madagascar, on the way back to the airport, her translator and guide stopped in a market and scooped a big bag of these small black beads and told her, test that. And of course, for a scientist, when somebody tells you test that, what do you do with it? You test it for what? So there's really nothing you do. So she put it in her freezer, and it had been in her freezer for 5 years. So she sent me these beads. And as the good scientists that we are, we did not ask what it was. We took 3 of these beads and we counted our stem cells, and we saw the best response that we had seen so far. And it happens to be the gel of one specific species. There are more than 65 species of aloe in Madagascar. Only Allomacroclada is being used to make a remedy in Madagascar called Vahona that is used for a broad variety of health benefits. So we went there, we developed a co-op to be able to harvest in the wild. We did a survey with the university to see how many live plants were in the wild. Since then, we developed a plantation. So we have planted over close to 100,000 new plants. So now we have a whole system to collect Allomacroclada because it was not a thing before. And it has given us so far the strongest response, so up to 80% increase in the number of endothelial progenitor cells and up to 50% in the number of more traditional CD34 stem cells. By the way, I'm simplifying the data here. I'm showing the effect on one type of stem cells, but we quantify various types here of stem cells. The last ingredient that is interesting in the formula is also black rice extract. The reason why I put black rice extract in StemActive is that What we have learned over the years is that there are parameters that can reduce the ability of stem cells once they have been released to identify the organs and tissues that are in need of repair. And it is systemic oxidation and systemic inflammation, free radicals and systemic inflammation. So we want to use compounds that have good science here to reduce systemic inflammation and also act as antioxidant. And in that class of product, one that is to me a product that is still, I mean, it's well known, but at the same time so underutilized in health and wellness is black rice extract. It was kept and known as forbidden rice, the emperor's rice, kept for the wealthy, kept for the royals. It is very, very high in anthocyanins. If you can find some black rice extract, just put it in your mouth. Anthocyanins are extremely bitter, and you will see right away how strong these anthocyanins are. So very strong antioxidant properties, and also help support healthy inflammation. So with StemActive, what you do, you basically put more stem cells in circulation. So within about an hour or two after taking one serving of StemActive, you will increase the number of stem cells in circulation by anywhere between 5 to 8 million. And then you will support their ability to migrate wherever they are needed in the body by having black rice within that mix. So basically, that's what StemActive does. Stimulates the release of your own bone marrow stem cells, support your body's ability, body's innate ability to repair. I say innate here because I find this fascinating. If you think about it, in science, if there's something for which we don't have a concept, then we don't have a word for it. We actually do not talk about it. Before the development of microscope, there was absolutely no concept for bacteria or anything that would be alive that is not seen by the naked eye. It's the microscope that not only revealed bacteria, but from the day that we discovered bacteria, we discovered their enormous importance in tuberculosis, pneumonia, gut flora. I mean, bacteria, obviously, we know today are everywhere in our lives. I think the discovery of stem cells is the same thing. We have all witnessed in our lives that the body has an innate ability to repair. You break a bone, the doctors put you in a cast, 6 weeks later, your bone is repaired. But what is interesting here is that the doctor will not tell you, during those 6 weeks, make sure you do A, B, and C to support the repair process, because the repair process, the healing process, was virtually unknown. Before the role of stem cells, we did not have an understanding of it. So all we know is that if you have a surgery or anything happens to you, the magic word here is go and get some rest. Now we know what happens. What happens is that your innate ability to repair is based on your stem cells. So by releasing stem cells, you support your body's innate ability to repair, your body's innate ability to stay healthy as you age, and then basically age with remaining healthy even in your later years. So that's what I wanted to share with you, Craig. If you have any question, then I'm here for you.
Thank you, Christian. We really appreciate that.